This is Facepalm America. I'm Beowulf Rockland. FacepalmAmerica.com is where you can find out more information about the show, listen to past episodes, connect with us on social media. Welcome to this wonderful fall episode. I really hope that where you are, the weather is at the least cool and crisp. Where I am, it is rainy, and I love it. After a summer of smoke and heat, it's absolutely fantastic to be here in Southern Oregon and absorbing moisture. I feel sort of like a dried out sponge, and it's just a welcome change. And on our political scene, we could use a few welcome changes as well. We really need to kind of shift the way that we're doing things, because clearly, if you look at the entire political spectrum, the very fact that we had a president like Donald Trump, the corruption that we see across the political spectrum. If you look at what's happening with Bob Menendez and him literally carrying thousands of dollars in cash and gold bars, stuffed in his pockets. This is the kind of influence that we see. It's just the tip of the iceberg. That's the kind of influence that we see in politics that money has, and we're desperately needing to get money out of politics to lessen the influence of it. And one of the good folks that we have spoken to about this in the past is Dan McMillan, and he's got an organization, and we've talked about it before on this show, called Save Democracy in America. And you can go to savedemocracyinamerica.org and find out more about it. And you can listen to him now because we got him here. Dan, welcome back to Facepalm America. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, Beowulf, it's so great to be with you again. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, well, thank you for being here, and thank you for taking this wonderful time of year as we retreat from the heat to be with us. I really appreciate that. So I want you to remind folks, if you could, about what your core proposal is for Save Democracy in America, for reducing the power of money in politics and returning power to the people. You've got a concept called democracy dollars, and I wonder if you could take some time to sort of reintroduce that concept to our audience, because I think it's an important one.
Yeah, thank you so much, Beowulf. So my organization, Save Democracy in America, is a strictly nonpartisan campaign with a single goal, which is to establish at the federal level a public financing mechanism for federal elections, the White House and Congress, that in Seattle has been called democracy vouchers because it's been used there at the city level since 2017. I have called it democracy dollars. Now, together with my partners in New Hampshire, we've decided that voter-owned elections is actually a more resonant term, but it's all the same idea. And what part of its strength is its common sense quality, given that the only people now who really have much influence in Washington anymore are heavy dollar campaign donors. Let's make ourselves the donors. And so the government would give every registered voter an allotment of campaign cash, an online account of campaign cash for each 2-year federal cycle, $100 per voter in the presidential years, $50 in the midterms, which are cheaper. And you can't take the money out and spend it, but you go online and assign this campaign funds to the candidates that you want to support. And if you fund the system at that level, which is quite robust, there is a big enough pool of public money that any candidate wants to serve us, they can draw on that pool. They can get enough money from the voters to run the kind of expensive campaign that you need to be competitive. And on the other hand, that candidate's opponent doesn't have a whole lot of excuse anymore for taking money from big oil, big pharma, Charles Koch, George Soros, name your favorite villain. And, will this completely drive big money out of politics? Probably not. But, we don't need to solve this problem entirely this year or next year or the year after. Right. What we need to do is get the country unstuck, because we're stuck right now. And, I think Americans on both sides of the aisle have been saying for years this isn't working. The dysfunction of our federal government has it's kind of gone from circus to farce. I think just in the last 6 months. You know what I mean?
It really has. The government and the media too, because you look at the way that the media talk about things, and it gets reflected in the way that ordinary people talk about things. It's just stunning to me to hear folks on TV talk about, like, who are the donors getting behind? They're fighting for donors for this and that, as if like that were supposed to be the determining factor in who wins an election. And it just comes off naturally. It's amazing. Over the course of my lifetime, as I've been paying attention to this, we move from who are the voters behind to who are the donors behind. And we've just kind of shifted into that so, like, disturbingly smoothly. That essentially means that we function as an oligarchy, and that's really, really disturbing. It shouldn't matter who the donors are. It's like we shouldn't be talking about the donors at all. And yet the reason that we are is because these big media concerns, whether you're watching MSNBC or Fox News or CNN or whatever it happens to be, they're in the thrall of this money too, because that's where they're getting their funding from. That's where they're getting their ad money from. Yeah,
it's a profit center, and they themselves are also heavy donors. Those media concerns, and all the talking heads on TV are multimillionaires who live in the same millionaires bubble as the politicians, the lobbyists, and so on. And you put your finger. I want to say the two things I want to comment, riff on that you said, Beowulf, that are so cool. One is it's gotten so brazen that in the media and among politicians and commentators, that they now openly state, it's like, well, how many donors do they have? And it becomes headline news. Peter Thiel is sitting this cycle out. Vivek Ramaswamy has got his own cash to fund his election. The doings, the opinions, the daily change in whims of this or that mega donor become headline news, and they've come to accept it and present it to us as if this were normal and acceptable. Now, the other thing I wanted to comment on, though, you said that we live in an oligarchy, and to that I can only say we should be so lucky, because if an oligarchy is a political system with 5 or 10 players, and if we had that, if all the big donors were on the same page, there would at least be the possibility of rational policy making and the country moving in a direction, even if it were unfair to the rest of us. But what we have now is anarchy. We have effectively a political system with 500 or 1,000 or 1,500 players, each of whom has a veto over whatever policy could gored their financial ox. So instead of oligarchy, we've got anarchy. And in a very real sense, we don't have a national government. Now, of course, we have executive branch agencies and we have the military, all of which operate on autopilot and continue to career civil servants who do their jobs with dedication. The country is safe from foreign aggression. The FBI catches criminals. The Department of Justice prosecutes them. Taxes are collected, Social Security checks. But when was the last time that we, the people, came together through our elected representatives and made choices about what kind of country we want to be and how do we want to master our challenges? And how do we want to seize our opportunities? In some ways, go ahead.
Yeah, what occurs to me, like when you say that, is that this money, and I know this is something that you thought about as well, this financial power, even more so than like deciding particular races at particular times, defines the field of what is put out there as possible. It limits what the projected realm of reality is, and so the conversations never happen outside of that. And part of that is the fact that we're constantly talking about money and we're constantly talking about donors, and we're never talking about like what the actual ideas are. What do we want to see in our society? And part of it is we just never get to hear about the people who would put forward those ideas or even remotely view them as legitimate candidates, because they're just rejected out of hand because they don't have enough money. as if that should be the deciding factor, and it doesn't have to be.
No, and that what's so insidious about it, Beowulf, is that all of this, what is effectively a process of the censorship, not just of speech, but even of thoughts, by money, by the need for money, that all of this takes place out of sight and out of mind, because let's say I'm thinking about let's say I wanted just to run for office, and I say, I'd really like to do A, B, and C for the country. And then I go to a campaign manager, and the campaign manager says, well, if you talk about A, B, and C, I can't get any donations to get your campaign off the ground.
Yeah.
The media will decide that you're not viable. The voters will never hear your name. And then I say, well, I guess I'm going to go do something else besides run for office. And the thing is, this has been going on since the end of the 1970s, beginning of the 80s. And the thing is that, because that's when the modern arms race between the parties and fundraising and spending kind of took off. And the cost of elections has rocketed upward far, far faster than inflation. And 2010 was an inflection point. Since then, it's just skyrocketed. It's
right, and that's because of the Citizens United decision that you're referring to there.
That and Speech Now BFTC, which was a D.C. circuit. Those two together gave birth to the Super PAC, which is this vehicle for it's a committee as long as it's nominally pretends to be independent of a candidate, although in fact they coordinate all the time. You can give unlimited funds to a super PAC, like a corporate. If General Motors, if Mark Zuckerberg wanted to put $10 billion into a super PAC, he could legally do it, and that super PAC could spend $10 billion on advertisements that hurt candidates Zuckerberg doesn't like or helps candidates that he does like, and that's all legal. And that has opened the floodgates so that, but in any case, it's, as I say, it's been going on since the 80s, and what happens is, as the campaigns get more expensive, as you need more and more donors to have a fighting chance, all kinds of ideas that you might think are good, you don't even express these ideas out loud, and eventually you stop thinking about them because they're just useless politically. And it's so insidious because no one really can see this happening, and also because it's been so gradual.
Right. Yeah, and you have no one to talk about with these, because you don't see anybody in the media reflecting that same point of view. And it's not just a matter of the people who get into politics directly, as you say. It's the people who never get into politics because they throw their arms up before it even happens, because they have absolutely no social reinforcement that it's a possible thing that this idea could come to pass, even though it's clear that things like Medicare for all and other ideas, it's not just progressive ideas, but across the political spectrum, people want things to happen, and yet that is rarely reflected back to them because it is not something that very powerful people want, and they have the means to make sure that those ideas, as a result, are not widely heard and not widely positively reinforced.
And what's even worse about it is that the heavy donors, they don't even have to make a decision to crush an idea.
Yeah, people self-censor because they're worried about not getting the money or not having other pathways open to them.
That's right. So it's almost as if, I think that, and one of the reasons I think also why, a lot of people, elite commentary doesn't get how destructive the money is that people work in the system, like politicians and donors, they don't really feel that the donors are so powerful because, again, the donors aren't giving orders directly to politicians, but they don't have to.
The amount of money that they have bends the shape of reality.
That's such a great way of putting it, Beowulf. I like that, particularly because a metaphor that I like is to say that the money has created a black hole in the political conversation that gets bigger and bigger and bigger as elections get more expensive. The black holes of astrophysics. It's invisible. No light escapes it.
It's invisible, and it literally draws light into it, and because the gravity is so powerful.
Yeah, and it's basically just sucked the life out of our political conversation in a death of 1,000 cuts. And one of the other things that's happened is that there was never a moment. I still remember going back to the mid-1980s.